So let's start. Next, please. So this is the outline of my presentation. I will have like a motivation of the paper and then the potential and challenges for second and third, and then I'm going to analyze the policies and regulations on Indonesian digital economy, and yeah, I will wrap up my presentation with the policy recommendations. Next. So this we have what's so-called the Golden Indonesian Vision to 2045, and is it exactly the same with like a Asian digital economic community, right? 2045. So 2045, the Indonesia will be 100 years, right, after independence. Independence in 1945. So we have what's so-called this golden vision, in which that we would like to be the high-income countries in 2045. And somehow government, in order to achieve these goals, government would like to have like 7% annual economic growth. This is very difficult, right? Because Indonesia only have like 5% economic growth, maybe in these 2 past decades. So 7% is, I don't know, it's very much ambitious or not, right? But yeah, government try to look the more to the new source of growth. And as you may know, one of them is just downstreaming or export ban of the raw materials. But the Ministry of Communication and Informatics provide this one, right? So might be that the digital economy in Indonesia will be just like the new source of growth, or as the catalyst for the achieving Golden Indonesian Vision 2045. So we have 3 pillars here: digital government, digital economy, and digital people. Digital economy is digital business, and we have ecosystem and foundation. So in my paper, however, we do not very much analyze the digital government, because I think it's very much slow in Indonesia, the digital government. As you may know, we are a unique archipelagic country. We are the largest archipelagic country, and we authorize our municipalities to govern, right, their government, right? So we have around like 400 something municipalities. So yeah, that's maybe why it's very difficult to push, right, the digital government. And I will very much talk about digital people and how our human resource will be very much a challenge for improving our digital economy. Next. So as you may see in this graph, we have increasing GMV, gross merchandise value of digital economy, has been double from 100 million to 194 million in 2022, and it's always been expected to be increased again for the next decades. So as you may see, we are very much rely upon the e-commerce. But I think I look at the country comparisons, we have a very much also strong food and transport or food delivery and ride sharing economy, right? I think I look at the Vietnam and Thailand, it's not very much just maybe rely upon the e-commerce only. So next. So I'm going to discuss about the potential of digital economy in Indonesia. We are very much the largest population in ASEAN, and the active internet users is around 62%. Although comparatively it is maybe like moderate, but in terms of number it's huge, right? 64 times 270 million is just like 100, maybe 60 million people of internet users, right? And of course, we are the big potential market for digital economy. And if you see on the supply side, however, I don't know, maybe you are wondering whether infrastructure will be the potential or the challenge, because both, yeah, potential will be on both sides, right? In potential, it's potential and also it's challenge, but on the and in the term of numbers, actually the secure internet server, we are very much in second, right, after Singapore. So this is the potential of Indonesian digital economy. And next, we also have Indonesia. This has the highest growth of merchandise value on both e-commerce and food delivery. I've already mentioned it, right? And what I want to mention, what I want to emphasize is that we have, however, a most varied e-commerce players in the market, right? Compared to maybe like Vietnam and Thailand, they just maybe rely on one digital platform or one e-commerce. But we have Tokopedia, our national e-commerce, and also we have Gojek, right, our ride-sharing e-commerce. So I think this gives us a strong and a more competitive digital platforms, right? This is very much good for us. And yeah, however, right, I don't know why. Maybe Bu Lily or maybe Ibu from Ministry of Trade could explain about why I think the progress of Gojek to penetrate the other Asian countries seems very slow, right? So yeah, later maybe we could discuss that. Next. So the first challenge is about human resources, but I think this already been mentioned by other speakers, right? The use of internet in Indonesia, somehow, yeah, the use is not for non-productive usage, right? So that's why our Ministry of Communication, Telecommunication and Informatics said that we have sensed that Indonesia is just becoming the digital consumers, right? We do it just for like socializing and also like this is doing social media, right? If you look at the graphic, you see that around 32%, yeah, something like 30% of our people, they just spend 2 to 5 hours in social media. This is very much somehow, yeah. Yeah, taking them like taking about 10% of them to be like a productive use is very much maybe could give us a boost on digital economy and economic growth, right? And according to the National Digital Literacy Index, 15% of respondents, right, this is 5 to 8 hours, and there are 12% of respondents have spread hoax news, right? So this is also the challenge for the digitalization in Indonesia. Next. And we see that, yeah, this already also mentioned that the gap, digital talents gap, digital skills gap, right? And Indonesia ranking is somehow decreasing, right? From 2019 to 2017, 2019, now we are ranked 52. But if you look at countries comparison, I don't know, yeah, Vietnam in stable position, Thailand also, but yeah, Indonesia is just declining. And you could see the right-hand side graph. This is the financial literacy and inclusion. So the blue one is for financial literacy, and the second one is for financial inclusion. So if you look at this, the one who included, financially included, is the one who less literate or illiterate, something like 35% of them. Only 1 minute left? Wow. Okay, next is human resource. We have so we have these shortage of skills, skill, and we have very low STEM graduates, right? Because this is important for the for the labor, right, in digital economy. Next, next. And the second challenge is network ecosystem. We have low quantity of BTS, right? And somehow we have corruption case in order to provide this underdeveloped outermost frontier region of the BTS. So there are still challenges. We know that it is important, but somehow, lack of good governance on providing this infrastructure is somehow very much a problem. And Indonesia lack of internet infrastructure in mountainous and hilly places, right? So yeah, there's low internet penetration in Indonesia. Next. And somehow we have the low quality of internet, right? Especially in urban. So in order to provide the internet infrastructure into the rural or into the outermost region, I think this inclusion somehow comes from the burden of the quality of the urban internet services. Because we have, next, yeah, we have the low cost of internet max. Internet max is challenging. Why? This will be the advantage, right? Or the potential, but it is not. The low cost means that it is a very much low average revenue per user for the telecommunication company. So they don't have enough fund to invest in quality in urban, right? Next. This is data and security for sure. Yeah, we have in the middle of the presentation we have the leak, the occurrence of data leaks. That we have many data leaks, even for the government, even for the banks, and also we have like on the left we have Indonesia doesn't hold any patents on technological products, so it will be like risk for the cybersecurity, right? Because it will be just owned by foreign. Next. So I'm going to talk about policies and regulation. We have multiple ministries concerned or authorized about the roadmap, about the policy taken by many, right? So there are even this what Bu Monica said, right? This is people said that there are fragmented policies between ASEAN countries, but even within Indonesia we have a fragmented roadmap, fragmented policies, right? So we need maybe one institution to orchestrate this roadmap and this policy about digital economy. Next. Okay, so this is the wrap up. So our recommendation will be one, explore the potential of the young population, because we have very young population, and we have to push them to take STEM, right? And second is open the market for satellites internet service. I don't know this is okay or not, right? Because it will be like data sovereignty on this one, right? If we open, we do build the satellites, right? Our own satellites, and we have already launched Satria 1, and maybe will be the Satria 2, but will be that very much costly, right? And this, I think, it is not feasible enough when we have like a very limited fiscal capacity for the next 10 years. So third is the enforcement of law. Yeah, we have a data leaks, but there's nothing happens. Yeah, for the doers, and there is not something, I don't know, enforcing action from the government. And the fourth is that I think we need to establish a ministerial body for the digital economy, just like Thailand, right? Thailand from this ministerial digital economy even in 2006, if I'm not mistaken, right? To orchestrate and synergize the digital economy, right? And the roadmap and the policy from the core into the layer 3 of the user apps. I think that's all for me. Sorry for maybe 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. We will now proceed to the discussion, and please, Dr. Shira Armstrong, would we hear your opinion on this piece?
Thank you very much, Anthony, and thank you to Dr. Chaikal for the excellent paper. I really enjoyed this paper and learnt a lot. I think it's really data rich. One level, it tells a bit of a sad story because it's so many challenges. Hello, so many challenges. But hopefully that works. I think it also highlights the potential, right? And so you get some of this right, and you start to achieve those, the lifting of the potential from 5% growth to 7%. As you said, could we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, the challenges are many, and I think the paper and the presentation did a really good job in highlighting those. You know, the huge potential that there is, while you're at 5% growth and you're starting to, Indonesia's starting to implement downstreaming policies, inward-looking policies to some extent, and industrial policy, and there's going to be a real challenge in maintaining higher growth. So I think this is an area that hopefully, I'll come back to the industrial policy point, how to deploy that becomes important, and you start to see the opportunity here in the digital economy space. So I think, you know, what's unique about Indonesia and what makes this even more important, as was mentioned, is the geography and the many communities that are not properly connected. So there are, of course, opportunities for e-commerce, government services, education and medical services. And this is for Indonesian consumption, but also Indonesian producers to be able to join the market and to connect to other consumers within Indonesia, but of course across ASEAN and beyond. So at once, distance matters, but distance matters much less. It was interesting looking at the data for the non-productive consumption of digital services. It's pretty interesting. Of course, it has other positive elements, like all the political scandals that get a lot of attention online. So I think, yes, while it's not all that productive watching TikTok all day, I think we should think about some of the other positive benefits, including improved leisure time. The inequality and digital divide issue is big. So 60%, 62% use the internet, and that's a large absolute number, as he mentioned, but that means 38%, which is also a very large number, are not actively online. And it was pretty interesting to see the internet servers, number of them much lower than Singapore, and given the population. So the big challenges of geography, digital literacy, internet speeds and access, again, that's an area I think paper highlights and for immediate policy focus. And of course, that raises the issue of the better connectivity and the potential for economies of scale and another Indonesian unicorn or two in the ASEAN market, and seeing some of the success that's already happened already. Next slide, please. So some of the recommendations I think are really good, sort of a ministerial body or a domestic agency to start to coordinate a bit better. Of course, Indonesia being in the middle of ASEAN and the largest economy and population in ASEAN has a big role, but also benefits greatly from ASEAN processes. And there are external arrangements like CPTPP, Digital Economy Partnership Agreement, and others that Indonesia can use as reference points and external leverage for reform. I think a bit of good news is that some of the challenges that were posed will have solutions found, technical solutions with innovation and technology. So I don't quite know how it works, but you mentioned foreign satellites. I mean, Starlink seems to be pretty effective in getting I don't know if you want Elon Musk anywhere near Indonesia, but some of the technology might solve these problems without huge investments in infrastructure and not having to launch your own satellites. But a lot of the other challenges are going to be difficult and require hard work. And that includes investment in education and maybe rethinking how the education system works for the modern age, investing in the capacity to regulate. So you'll have solutions found in technology and innovation, but we'll still need to be able to regulate those. And I think that's where ASEAN and the external reference points will be really useful and important. But also a final point here, with of course limited resources, every economy, every country has limited resources, but especially developing economies. And the temptation will be to as I said, deploy more industrial policy, pick winners, but instead of wasteful subsidies, it's better, I think, to focus on investing in the ecosystem and the public goods that will create the next unicorn, not try to subsidise those that generally receive subsidies that have diminishing returns and aren't the unicorns. So thanks, I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. So before opening up to the floor, we will hear some insights from Her Excellency Dina Kunisara about the Indonesian case. So please, Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
So thank you for giving me the floor, for giving a very brief insight on the digital economy in Indonesia. First of all, I would like to once again extend my highest appreciation for AREA for inviting me and also Indonesian delegations to this very prominent events for us to sharing views and also identify recommendations for developing the digital economy in ASEAN. Regarding the situations in Indonesia, as I believe, as all colleagues already aware, we put DEVA as one of our PED this year during Indonesian chairmanship. So during the IEM in August, we already deliver a very prominent outcomes. We already endorsed the leader statement for DEVA, and then the second one, we also endorsed the study regarding the DEVA, also the framework of the DEVA itself. And during the IC Council in September, we also launched the DEVA negotiations, and the negotiations will take place in few weeks from now, the first round. And for Indonesians itself, I also noted that you also already identify several obstacles, challenges that we face. And based on our internal coordinations with the land agency, actually, we can also identify 3 major problems or challenges faced by Indonesia. The first one is the lack of infrastructures. I believe this is also already identified in your presentations. And the second one is also related with the lack of the human resource, digital literacy amongst the amongst the people in Indonesia. Since actually we have a democracy, bonus of demography, and we do have a lot of numbers in young people. But in the context of the digital literacy, we still have a lot of homework. So I believe we need to address this issue as well. And the third one, and I believe this is also the major issue for us, is related with the lack of regulatory regulations, our internal regulations, particularly for the issues that have cross-sectoral issues amongst the ministries. Even though that we do have a Ministry of Economic Coordination to control these issues, but somehow we don't have any regulations to several sensitive issues. So I believe in the future it will be necessary for us for having appropriate regulations take place in our domestic legal regime. And the other thing that I believe also quite difficult for us is we don't have any domestic roadmap in place right now. But based on our coordinations, I just got a very good news that we will have a kind of a national strategy on digital economy that it will be launched in the 6th of December. I believe this is going to be a good milestone, a very huge milestone for Indonesia. But the problem will be on the implementations. We do have a lot of initiative in place in our domestic side, but somehow in the context of implementations and also in the context of coordinations, we miss the implementations issues. So I believe this is a very big homework for Indonesia to take care of this issue in a very good manner. And the other problem will be also on to raise the awareness on digitalization, particularly for the SMEs, since 80%, 90% of the role of the economic growth in Indonesia will be on the SME side. So it will be important for Indonesia to also improve digital improvements on digitalizations on the SMEs. And actually, currently, governments already also conduct several initiatives to our SMEs people. But somehow we also address some challenges like there are several reservations from the SMEs dealing with digitalization. So I believe this is something that we also must to address this issue carefully. And in the context of Indonesia in facing digital community 2045, I believe this is also a very good initiative that we can support. But we also must utilize, I believe, the initiative that already undertaken under ASEAN cooperations with dialogue partners. Since I believe the e-commerce issue always become major agreements with the DPs. We do have e-commerce chapters in RCEP, but somehow the implementations only for the cooperations only. And currently, we also negotiate digital economy chapters with China under upgrading of ASEAN China. We also have the issue of e-commerce chapters under the ASEAN Canada negotiations. All these negotiations give us a very good examples in the way we must address the digital economy, also e-commerce issues very carefully, because the DPs, our dialogue partners, already see this issue in a very robust and they always say this is kind of a game changer issues for all FTAs in all regions. And if we also observe the contents of the digital economy that they already proposed on the table, they have a very broad in scope, very ambitious in the level of negotiations, even though currently we only can commit in the cooperations in the context. But somehow we must also already start to think the way forward and push forward to engage in more ambitious step regarding the digital economy, because once again this is like the new issue that we must address very carefully, or we will left behind if we cannot address these issues carefully. And one of the main problem that also faced by not only for Indonesia but I believe for other ASEAN countries as well is related the development gap. Actually, Pak Shiro also already mentions about the geographic side, and also the presenters also already mentioning about the geography side. But not only the geography side, but I believe one of the challenges is also the mindset of the people regarding the internet itself. We know that actually the use of the internet in Indonesia is we have a high number of the users of the internet in Indonesia, but we don't use in the maximum basis. Majority of us only use it for the leisure moment, for the TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Majority of the youth people always use it only for the social activities. So this is kind of also the change on the mindset, how to improve and use the digital economy in daily context for more have a high impact activities rather than only for other social activities. And we can mention those people as the netizen. I don't know whether this terminology is familiar with you, but we do have a very mean and very wild netizens. If something happens in Indonesia, for instance, particularly in a very famous people, then they will have a netizen attack. I believe this is something that this is like the social phenomenon that can be used actually as for our benefit, not and for our point of change. The game of change would be in the youth generations, how to optimize the use of the internet. And
very interesting comments indeed. We must now proceed to the open floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we shall open up to the floor for a few minutes now. And does anyone have any comments or reflections on what you've just heard?
Hello. Oh, I have one question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Chaital, and informative, very full information from the madam from the Indonesian ministry. I'm going to make a question quick. I found out that during the presentation in the paper, it mentioned that the people of Indonesia are using internet for the socializing and entertainment. And I found out that the online shopping category is under the entertainment. So it is very much similar to our country. We are using the Facebook. We do not have a proper, very few e-commerce channel. We're using a Facebook for online shopping. Selling and buying things. So is there any kind of activities strong in Indonesia? So strong means that strong on the Facebook, like selling and buying in Indonesia. If yes, then how the government is, regulating, controlling, administrating those kind of commercial activities on the social media? That's my first question. Second question is that I found out that the financial literacy is low according to the paper. So is there any other form of financial services are strong? For example, like in our country, like about a decade ago, although the things are selling and buying on the online, but we only like to make a payment with cash on delivery because we did not have access to the banks. Like 5 years back, the banks are getting stronger. We have a digital services, we have a payment services. So then people cash on delivery is declining, and this kind of digital services are getting higher. So I just want to know what is the main point of the financial literacy apart from the infrastructure, and if there is a financial literacy is very low, then what is your recommendation to make it good? So that's my second question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I should have thanks for Mr. Armstrong, Professor Armstrong, for his additional recommendation. I think it is quite appropriate if we talk about education, right? Because one way to improve the digital literacy and financial literacy is actually to revise our curriculum, right? So introduce how to use like internet services, how to use the financial services and everything in even in elementary school. But of course, this is not just obliged to the government, right? Because the fruit of this literacy is going to the digital platforms. So we need also like push the digital platforms to also, yeah, working together in order to provide like trainings and education, right? And yeah, I agree with Ibu Dina also with the SMEs. Mostly is being overlooked in the paper. So in Indonesia somehow, yeah, most of our SMEs is just retailers or traders. We only have like 18% of them just producing or just in the industri pengolahan tuh apa ya, manufacturing, something like that, right? So it means that they use the social media and also digital platform or e-commerce platform to sell. But the problematic one is that from where the goods comes from, because the SME is not producing. I mean, not all, yeah, very few of them just producing the goods. So the goods comes from foreign, right? That's why people just, government just mentioned that this is just the e-commerce just channeling of the imported goods, right? And for I agree also with the youth, right? Yeah, I think we have like, I don't know, a low level of entrepreneurship for the youth and also the growth mindset that they have, right? I don't know whether this could be trained or educated in the, I don't know, in the elementary or tertiary education. But yeah, I noticed that, right? And also about the, what is that? Yeah, I just like to emphasize about, so this is not just about geography factors, but also demography factors, right? Because we have youth, we have the bonus demography, but the youth doesn't have maybe like entrepreneurial traits and growth mindset. But also the old one, they even don't have like digital literacy. So how we could have inclusion on digital economy if even they don't have like smartphones and everything, right? Even in the rural, we don't have like a very much internet services. So we have two factors that, yeah, I think that's magnified the digital divide, right? Geography and demography. So yeah, I think that's all. Thank you.
Yes, Mira, go ahead.
Thank you so much for the very interesting presentations, very informative. I have a question about New Zealand's, Indonesia's position under the WTO JI initiative. So it is one of the very few ASEAN countries that is not part of the JI negotiations at this point of time. And I wanted to ask, from the perspective of the government, where do you see certain downsides to being part of this initiative? So what is your thinking behind your strategy, and whether at one point of time you might wish to actually engage in these bilateral negotiations? Thank you so much.
Sorry, did you? Yes, you have a question as well, or?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So since Ibu Dina mentioned about this wild netizens, right? So our conversation today is about ASEAN Digital Community 2045. It's beyond, ASEAN Digital Economic Community, right? And I was wondering to what extent we should cover, perhaps this also refers to the first paper on ASEAN Digital Community 2045, covering issues on disinformation and content moderation, as well as emerging fake news laws to to manage this information, right? Because this really influences both digital culture in Indonesia, but in ASEAN more generally. So I guess that could be like consideration, because so far, like the 4 pillars doesn't really discuss about this, a big elephant in the room on this information. And this can really influence not only digital culture, but also threaten liberal democracy in democratic countries, but also electoral outcomes and many other things that would be very important for ASEAN. Thank you.
So would you like to quickly respond to these 2 questions?
Yeah, maybe I just want to have a disclaimer. I'm not an international economist. So the paper is very much overlooked about the agreement. Even, there are many abbreviations that I just not familiar with. So yeah, I'm looking for maybe like the co-authors in order to strengthen about the international regulation and something. That's all. Sorry.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think that wraps up this session. Shall we move on to the next one? Unless anyone else has any quick question regarding the economy in Indonesia? No? Okay, then we'll move on. So next speaker will talk about the digital economy in Laos, and we welcome Phet Seng Punya. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me today. I'm going to share with you briefly about digital economy in Laos PDR. Okay, maybe you can just go to the next slide. Just like many other countries, I think Laos PDR recognizes the importance of the digital economy development to contribute its national development. And in fact, the Laos PDR engaged in telecommunication and ICT for a long time, but it expressed its clear interest in digital economy in 2000 when it participated in the ASEAN framework. And since then, the country has really made progress in digital transformation in the country. And the digital economy of the Laos PDR in the past years has grown pretty good, I would say. For example, in 2019, the digital economy of the Laos PDR contributed to 3% of the country GDP to the economic growth, which is close to the size of financial and insurance sector. And in the past 5 years, the digital startup and businesses in the Laos PDR has also been emerging. In 2020, there are more than 2,000 ICT and telecommunication business units in the country. And according to the survey of the Lao ICT Commerce Association in 2020, the ICT sector in Lao PDR has grown in between 15 to 20% every year. And the government of Lao PDR has also increasingly developed and adopted digital technology in its governance and services. For example, the government introduced the e-visa application, online passport application, and also online tax payment system, electronic and voter payment system through online. So I would say the government or the Lao PDR did quite good in the past year, but however, the other country did better. The digital economy of the Lao PDR is lagging behind the other country in the region. As of August last year, 2022, the digital economy of the Lao PDR was ranked 9th out of 10 among the ASEAN member states in the term of digital access, quality, and affordability. So can we just move to the next slide? However, I think there's a lot of potential for Lao PDR to develop its digital economy. For example, the country has strategic geographical location, I would say. The country is located in the heart of the region that provide it access to emerging and large market for digital goods and services. And it has good potential of becoming the logistic hub of the region. And this is supported by the operation of Lao China Railway that officially opened in the end of 2021. And at the same time, I think the government of the Lao PDR is also trying to work hard or provide good support to facilitate the development of the digital economy in the country. The country adopted a series of policies and initiatives in order to promote the development of digital infrastructure, digital literacy, and e-commerce, and etc. And at the same time, the country also has emerging digital startup and young and growing population. So this can help contribute to the development of the digital economy in the country. And in addition, the growing class in the growing middle class in the country also increase the demand for the use of new digital products and services. And I think this is quite, this is good potential for the development of digital economy in the Lao PDR. And of course, with the potential and opportunity, okay. Or maybe, yeah, I should also mention that, with the development of the digital economy in the Lao PDR, we also offer a lot of positive, let's say, benefit for the countries. For example, improve the government services, increase the economic growth, and establishment of new jobs, and also enhance financial inclusion, improve access to the education and healthcare, and so on. And of course, it comes with challenges. The country or the Lao PDR is facing with the shortage of digital skill, and significant number of the Lao people, especially elderly people and those in the remote area, do not have the basic digital knowledge or skill that is required to participate in the digital economy. And the legal framework of the Lao PDR in connection with the digital economy is also really weak and fragmented. And the country does not have proper implementation and enforcement mechanism in place. So this can raise uncertainty and risk for business and investor, which result in low confidence and trust to invest in the country, right? And also the digital infrastructure in Lao PDR is really, not really, but is underdeveloped, I would say. The country broadband internet infrastructure does not cover all part of the country, and of course only in the major city. But the quality is still slow, yet expensive. So this can hinder the business and individual from accessing and using the digital technology that will accelerate the development of the digital economy. And also the country does not have high digital technology in preventing the cyber issue. And of course, is vulnerable to the cyber attack, right? Like that data breaches and malware infection and so on. So this can damage, cause damage to businesses or individuals who participate in the digital economy. And to be honest, most of the consumer in the country also lack confidence on online shopping or online services. And this can also be another challenge. And the country does not have proper consumer redress mechanism for the online activity, I will say, at this moment. And also, the country is vulnerable to, let's say, external shock, like the global economic downturn or economic instability, and of course, geopolitical tension between superpower like US and China like this. And can we just go to next slide?
You've got about 2 minutes remaining.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's okay. The digitalization, just like in many countries, I think, has significant impact to many aspects in different areas. And just like Lao PDR, the digitalization has impact in social, cultural, political, and security aspect. For example, of course, the digitalization can help promote education and innovation and help the entrepreneurs start their businesses. And of course, increase the transparency, efficiency of the government, help the government to better engage with the citizen and ease the complex regulatory processes. But at the same time, it can also lead to the inequality or the disparity in the society, and also lead to cultural erosion of the traditional cultural, I would say, when there is spread of the Western culture online, and then it can lead to the erosion of the traditional culture. And also it can be target to the dissident to spread misinformation and propaganda against the government, and mobilize opposition to the government, and so on. And okay, I think time is quite short. And can we go to next slide? And however, to grab opportunity in the digital economy, the country also, the country is aware of the necessity to improve the infrastructure and also policy and regulatory environment in order to facilitate the digital economy. And that's why the country adopted a series of policy, like its national 5-year national socio-economic development plan, and then digital vision, digital strategy, and digital work plan. And also recently the president of the LAPIDA also appointed new committee for the country digitalization. And so let's go to the last.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you soon.
This is the recommendation. So this is the recommendation of the speaker. So of course, as I said, the regulatory environment is not favorable, right? And like still weak. So the country should continue to review, revise, improve it, and also make sure that the implementation and enforcement mechanism are in place. And also, again, from the challenge, right, like underdeveloped digital infrastructure, so the government should continue to develop them, expand the broadband infrastructure, and of course promote the innovation, development of digital skill, building trust and confidence among the consumer, and so on. And by adopting these basic recommendation, I think the government or the LAPIDA will be able to establish more supportive environment for the digital economy to thrive. and also accelerate the economic growth. And yeah, I think that's all about the Lao digital economy. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Very insightful. So we now leave the floor open to Maria to discuss. I'd like to hear your insights.
Yeah. Excellent paper, as we have all seen.
I think it's.
Yeah, so as we have seen the presentation by Dr. Sanghuya, the paper is very comprehensive, covering, all different kind of areas of digital economy, but also covering the challenges, potentials, and impacts on the economic, social security, social culture, and political security. In summary, the paper basically shows that Laos started from a low base in digital development, but sets a very ambitious target to harness digital technologies to leapfrog development and make Laos a land-linked country from a landlocked country. And despite various policies, implementation progress has been hindered by various challenges, including economic instability and other external shocks, right? As Dr. Sanghuya mentioned, the geopolitical rivalries. And the author also offers a set of policy recommendations for Laos to accelerate its digital development. So the paper is very comprehensive, covers various areas of Lao digital economy. Just some comments. Next slide, please. To help perhaps enrich the paper. I think the paper could benefit from having some comparison of Laos digital economy level and progress with other countries, and showing how Laos is catching up or not catching up, right, with ASEAN member states. As the author already mentioned in the presentation, that Laos has made some progress, but it's still lagging behind most of ASEAN member states when it comes to digital development. And secondly, given Laos' high economic dependence on China and political alignment and gravity towards China, I think it might be good to possibly highlight whether this risks Laos being excluded from the US and the EU-led digital economy initiatives and in turn diverging away from the US or EU standards and regulatory frameworks. Next. And reflecting from my own work on Laos, I think it might be good perhaps to also mention what happened during COVID-19 pandemic in Laos that could shed lights on the lack of an unequal digital development in Laos and how it has further widened inequality. For example, a World Bank high-frequency household survey in April 2021 shows that only 29% of households had their school-aged children engaged in remote learning activities during school closure. And the remote learning incidence was much higher in urban than in rural areas, and in the top 60% than the bottom 40% of households. And then fourthly, perhaps the paper could also not only discuss about digital development, but also the analog complements that could support digital development. 98% of children in Laos, school-age children, are suffering from learning poverty, meaning that 98% of 10-year-old children in Laos cannot read or understand an age-appropriate text. So even, before we move to digital literacy, even basic literacy is still very much lagging behind. So I think might be good to highlight the importance of some of these analog complements to support low digital development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before we proceed, we have some insights from the government officials of Laos. So would you please proceed? I'm not sure which one of you will take this. Any takers for this one? Yes, Your Excellency, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Maybe you need to speak closer to the mic.
Yes, thank you, moderator, for giving me the floor. Good afternoon to at the outset. Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator, for giving me the floor. Good afternoon to all of you. At the outset, I would like to thank Area and Thailand for having this very timely meeting today and tomorrow on dialogue on ASEAN Digital Community 2045. I would like to commend Dr. Pet Seng Panya for his insightful and comprehensive presentation on digital economy in Laos. My thanks are also extended to this discussion for her useful comment. As you know, digital economy covers many sectors and many agencies in Laos, as Dr. Pet already presented in his paper recently. We cover the role of online government agency, current status of the development of economy, digital economy challenges, and finally come up with a very useful policy recommendation. So I would not repeat again what he has already mentioned, how progress Laos has developed. We also evaluate that his paper could very well reflect the development of the digital economy of Laos, which is considered as one of the key priorities in its 5-year national development agenda. This paper also covers on sectors clearly related to digital economy and current status that government has been making a great effort. This paper also provides us useful, very information in this regard. We will take note of his recommendation and take into account for consideration. To develop digital economy of Laos, we looking forward to working actively and constructively with you and Dr. Pet further. Regarding to the recommendation, I would like to have comment from our perspective as following suggests how we can leverage digital technology for development grow in Laos. First, I agree with the presentation from Dr. Pet that ICT infrastructure is the foundation of digital economy. Without reliable internet connectivity, any digital services, including smartphone apps, cannot be used. We need to help the public and private sector invest in telecommunication infrastructure and internet connectivity. Second, building human resources with the right skills is the key driving force for digital transformation. Digital literacy is essential for people to take advantage of new job opportunity and benefit from services that will become available on a digital platform. Third, we need to support countries to develop enabling policy and regulatory environments to benefit from digital transformation and avoid negative impacts. Countries need appropriate regulatory environments to first promote data sharing with sufficient protection of personal data and privacy. Second, protect consumer against cyber crimes and fraud. Third, prevent illegally activities such as money laundering and terrorist financing. And fourth, enhance cybersecurity to prevent cyber attacks and hacking. In conclusion, MOSC or LAOPDR, together with other like government agencies of LAOPDR, stand ready to engage with all ASEAN members and dialogue partners of ASEAN that wishes to learn more about the arrangement and development of digital economy. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much. We will now open the floor for some general Q&A. Any questions regarding the situation in Laos? Well, if there are no questions, I can throw in a question here. In what regard would you say, would you anticipate cybercrime to increase with the development of the digital economy?
Okay, so that's all for question. Only one.
Yes,
okay.
I don't see anyone else. Anyone else? Oh, yes. Sorry. You go ahead. Go ahead. You take mine first. I didn't see you there.
Yeah, I would like to follow up the question from Dr. Maria regarding the agreement with the digital economy. So normally we have like three ways to go for the agreements, like go for the US, EU, and another one is China. And as Laos is related more to China, do you think it is a good idea that Laos will be like follow the Chinese agreement, like more flexible, not more comprehensive, but focus more on the facilitations and also in terms of the e-commerce? What do you think? Yep.
Thank you for the very important comments that I can, of course, further improve my paper. So I think I would jump to the last two questions first, to the cyber attack from our moderator. I think the cybercrime that will increase is mostly about the data breaches. As I said, that LAOPDR still does not have like high technology to prevent this, and of course it can also cause some disruption, right? And if there is a cybersecurity attack, so there's some disruption. Of course, it can cause a great damage to businesses and also to the country. So let's say that so cybercrime, it should be a cyber attack from those data breaches. And yeah, okay. I think, yeah. And to the question of Dr. Chongwanit about the US-EU-led digital economy initiative and China. And yes, I agree that Laos now depend a lot on China aid, especially in in the form of aid from China, and it's also possible that the US and EU will feel hesitate to include Lao PDR in its digital economy initiative. But I think, Lao PDR also can and also should, not only can, but also should continue working, or maybe continue have dialogue with the also US and EU partner. And I think now Lapida is also working on this, and Lapida is working with a lot of development partner like World Bank and International Telecommunication Union, and also ASEAN Development Bank. And I think they also raised this issue, and I think Lapia take this into the consideration. And I think that's all. Maybe I hope this answer your question for this point.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, that wraps up this session, and we will now have a coffee break till 4 p.m. and upon which we will start the workshop again. So go out and grab yourself a cup of Java, and we'll see you here again in 15 minutes.
maybe the battery weak.
Yeah, yeah, the battery is weak. Yeah. This one.
Because the one is like
All right, we shall begin shortly. All right. I think we're all here now. So we shall begin the last segment for the day. And coming up now will be The Digital Economy in China by Sharitao Kong. So please proceed.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you very much. A very good afternoon to everyone who are very lucky to be there. You don't know how envious I am. So I really wish I were there with you. So enjoy and make the most out of it. Thank you again for the opportunity to share this study with everyone. And I want to thank the organizer, especially all the very kind support and help from area, and also very helpful comments and constructive comments from my discussant. Let me share this chapter about China's digital economy with you. Next, please. Yeah. What I wish to cover, I may not succeed very well, but this is my intention. I wish to cover first is about so what do we actually mean by digital economy in the Chinese context, and what does it consist of, and how it has grown or evolved over the recent decades, and how fast it has been growing, what's the growth pattern, and throughout this period of time, and how has it developed in terms of developmental stages. It has gone through different patterns and has its own dynamics, and what impacts it has created on various aspects. And then naturally we want to understand what drove this growth or development in terms of digital economy in China. So I call them underlying determinants. And to some extent, this may suggest some sort of regularity that governs the development of digital economy. And if we look forward, what are the outlooks and suggest as challenges as well as constraints that we are facing, and how do we go about this? And that leads to the last part of the chapter, looking at what are the policy direction, how we have been governing this process, and what are the ideas and initiatives or the plans we have in terms of regulating the process. Okay, next please. Let's proceed with one by one. First, in terms of definition, in the Chinese context, what we actually mean by digital economy, it refers to the use of digital information and network technology to promote economic growth or development involving many different areas. Yeah, and in line with this conceptualization, the integrated application of information and communication technology, as well as the transformation of all elements, are seen as driving force. So why do I want to emphasize this? In terms of the concept of a digital economy, maybe this is generally agreed across different countries, but the emphasis we put on transformation will lead to the next slide. We were talking about industrialization of digital technology as well as the digitalization of industries. Okay, next, please. So in China, when we talk about digital economy, we are talking about various key areas, and starting with e-commerce, and then a very important infrastructure, which is considered as an infrastructure now, is digital payment. In fact, just as this morning, we've received a delegation from central bank, Indonesian central bank, to talk about digital payment precisely on this topic. Yeah. And then in terms of digital economy in China, aside from e-commerce and digital payment, we also put a lot of emphasis on the digital financial service or fintech other than payment. And then digital content, this is probably sort of the same across different countries and regions, and big data, AI, Internet of Things, cloud computing, cloud services, and so on. So these are the key areas. And next, please. And here I just want to share with you a chart indicating how fast it has been growing. China's digital economy is by all means a very large and very fast growing, has a very fast growing record. Yeah, over the past, so this is basically the past 10 years or so. The size of the digital economy is reaching half. Yeah, I think it's reaching half of the GDP, and certainly this is the driver of GDP growth. Next, please. And in terms of overall size, this is the statistics we are looking at, and both in terms of market size and the speed, we are in this kind of very impressive record. And as I emphasize in terms of our digital economy concept, we are talking about digital industrialization. So this is one big chunk of how we perceive a digital economy, and the other is the industrial digitalization. So one is related to application of the new technology, and the other is how you transform of the existing industries so that you will combine digital technology and the industrialization so that you can generate the growth impetus and contribute to the development of digital economy. The size, yeah, so here we have the data about the size and how it's ranked worldwide. Next, please. And here we show the scale of internet, the number of internet users, as well the extent of internet penetration. And I think this is already alluding to what's underlying the digital economy, the growth of digital economy without having stable and widely accessible and affordable internet. There's no way to talk about digital economy. So the share of internet users amongst the Chinese population, as well as the great degree of internet penetration, is really very much the first step, or if you like, the precondition for any digital economy to develop. And one of the first sort of and also probably most noticeable part of digital economy is e-commerce. And using this as an example, just to show how large the size of e-commerce is. In fact, the total transaction value of e-commerce in China is the US, UK, Germany, France, South Korea combined. So this is how big the e-commerce market is. And it's important to realize how e-commerce plays a very active role in the context of digital economy, because if you think about how digital finance or digital financial services come about, it was at the very beginning was to facilitate e-commerce to take place. Yeah, the third-party payment, the digital payment was there to serve the third-party kind of payment role in order to circumvent the issue of custodian kind of issue. Yeah. So this really plays an important role. And just recently we have the November 11th, which is the great sort of e-commerce kind of celebration online. This year we had nearly 600 million parcels, I think, put in order. These were all orderings from e-commerce. So this is a great sort of a way to understand how digital economy is taking place and transforming people's life, as well as the way we organize our economy. Okay, next, please. And when it comes to growth, it's not just the overall size matters. There are several stages. It's not always the same. It's not a straight line. So we divide this into 4 different stages. At the very beginning was before 2000, was more like paving the way and slowly setting up the scene. And the preliminary development stage is early 2000 to early 2010s. And during this process, during this period of time, we had e-commerce taking off. It gained popularity, and an important platform called Alipay, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, was established in 2004, and it has become the leading mobile payment platform, and later on it was a super platform which offered many apps. And in the 2010s, from early 2010s to mid 2010s, and there's a huge spur of development in terms of digital economy. And one big event or landmark was 2013, which we call the beginning of fintech in China. Now we take it for granted almost that everybody goes around without a wallet and only having a mobile phone for digital payment. But 2013 marked the time when we had a cash fund developed on Alipay, and that was a huge innovation, even though when it started, it wasn't considered innovation. It had a huge struggle. Even politically, it stimulated a major debate. But in the end, it was considered a great innovation, and then the rest is history, basically. And where we are at, it's at the intelligence and innovation-led stage, where we are making a more enriched experience, looking at how digital economy is becoming is at the very much the central stage of the growth. Okay, next, please. And then I want to spend a little bit time, just a minute, talking about the impact that digital economy has created in China. If we can summarize it in the following aspect, the first is how it has fueled, and now it's certainly become China's the driver of China's economic growth, and increases productivity and efficiency. Secondly, digital economy has created many jobs, and be it online related, be it SMEs, online e-merchants, or through various other means, for example, delivery guys, logistics related. So it has definitely created a very large, a very sizable employment for China. Hundreds of millions are related to a digital economy sector. And it has brought about a very convenient and efficient consumption experience. So as we are switching from an investment-led growth model to a consumption-led growth model, this plays a very important role. If you can facilitate consumption, if you can encourage consumption, then this partly explains why digital economy is such a great driver for growth. And fourthly, digital economy promotes the digital transformation and intelligent upgrading for traditional industries. And this is to integrate digital technology in various ways, be it a management system or the way you make ordering, sales, and so on and so forth, how you manage your production, how you manage your service provision, as well as the whole supply chain integrated with the digital technology and financial services. And the fifth aspect is to accelerate the integration of urban-rural development. So by definition, if you have things provided in the digital space, it is super, so it is neutral to your location, so long as you have a stable and easily accessible internet. So that has definitely reached the formerly underdeveloped and disadvantaged area in a fast speed much more efficiently, much more effectively than physical establishment. And six, it has enhanced international competitiveness as a more like a result of the overall improvement. Okay, let me go into a little bit detail of the next slides, please. And so with all the wonderful things the digital economy can achieve, what are the drivers behind this? And so how do we get there? This is a question we often get asked, and we also need to reflect ourselves to understand how this digital economic development comes about. So if we can put it in a very simplistic way, it is more about how a government or the regulator plays the right role, plays the appropriate role, and how the market is allowed to play its role. Yeah. So if we can put this in a somewhat new structural economic flavored kind of context, we're talking about very capable government, and so government doing its own job, and we let the market play an effective role. So with the policies provided and the right environment allowed for, the market will play. The market will encourage innovation and with a degree of healthy competitiveness, digital economy can take place. So let me go into a little bit more details in terms of policy as well as other determinants. Yeah. Next, please. Okay. Now, from the government policy side, there are directive support, for example, in terms of investment, in terms of tax incentives and entrepreneurial support, and data governance. So more in terms of regulation, data localization, transfer of regime, and all these rules. And this is not to say we are already at sort of a perfect sort of state. In fact, challenges related to data governance is quite daunting, and both the legal apparatus and the data regulators and financial regulator are struggling to keep up with all the challenges and issues emerged. But nonetheless, this is an important role that the government policy have played, and to the credit to the regulators, it has created a relatively secure environment for digital development to take place. Content moderation, I'm sure this is sort of a common to all regulators. And last point about competition, this is one of those very contentious and also challenging topic. How does the government maintain this balance between encouraging innovation, allowing for innovation, as well as providing stability and protection to consumers, and make sure data privacy and fund safety are looked after. So this is we have successful and some not so successful experiences. The policy development has not been a straight line. It wasn't a linear kind of thinking. You wouldn't be able to see the end from the very beginning. It was a trial and error experiments and learning by doing in the process. So here we give an example like a tech crackdown kind of thing. So give you just a very quick example, like what peer-to-peer lending platforms happened in China. At the high time, we had, I think, close to 6,000 platforms doing P2P, but now the number is 0. So we've gone through many challenges. We've gone through in terms of the government regulators, and the process has not always been smooth, but we have learned a lot and have achieved a lot. Okay, and then scientific and technology development and innovation. So universities as well as other institutions have been supported by government with designated funding support and other forms of support to promote digital innovation. And the preconditions, what I call them, is that the infrastructure provision or infrastructure development. So you need to have the base of internet users and high enough level of internet penetration. So once you have all this in place, and then we can talk about how we make good use of it, how other forms of businesses and the production can take place. Okay, next, please. Okay.
So
and
time is up now, so I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up very quickly.
Okay, yeah, very quickly. So this I won't go through. This is basically just a summary of what we have covered in terms of various policies. And in last two pages. Yeah. Next, please. Yeah. Future outlook. So, future outlook, most likely we will continue to innovate and continue to invest in digital technology and infrastructure, and policy regulators that govern China's digital economy will have to address various issues, as we mentioned, and mainly in terms of industrialization of digital technology and digitalize industrialization. So these are the main things we're looking at. Cross-border economic cooperation is certainly what China pays a lot of attention, and hopefully that will bring some fruitful results. And last slides, yeah. Last slides. I will skip this. I think these are sort of quite self-explanatory. Yeah, policy directions. Yeah, I have the second last. Yeah, I have done a summary of how the key policies have come about and what to give you a flavor what the government has been doing. So the China's digital economy has very much benefited from a relatively lax policy environment, and I think that was essential for China's digital economy to take off, and for the subsequent management to strike a balance was always the main thing. So we have outlined a number of policy directions in the previous slides. That will be the very last one. Sorry, can we go one up? Yeah, the one we skipped. Yeah, one up. Yeah. So these are the 5 areas of important policy areas that we're looking at, and this wraps up our discussion about China's digital economy. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we will now go over to the discussant, Kentaro Machi.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kentaro Machi from India. It's my great honor to have this opportunity to discuss the digital economy in our region today. So first, let me introduce my role in AREA. In this year, AREA launched a new initiative called eDesk, which aims to support the startup ecosystem within our region. As the startup ecosystem manager, I am responsible for facilitating innovation by holding events and other necessary support for startup ecosystem. So, Dr. Sherry, thank you so much for your excellent and very informative paper that comprehensively analyzed the development of China's digital economy and government policies. I think it's remarkable that the digital economy contributed to China's significant growth, and it is led by capable government and effective markets, now accounting for 41% of China's economy. I have taken note that the segregation of domestic and international market and weak protection of privacy have been one of the factors of this progress, which shows a kind of dilemma between economic growth and the advanced rules of the digital economy we want to achieve through DeFi and other frameworks. I think China's initiative to overcome these challenges are important for advancing cross-border digital economic cooperation in ASEAN, as Dr. Shri recommended in the paper. So next slide, please. So I would like to pose some questions related to the paper for further discussion from my perspective. I understand in many countries, including ASEAN, startups that drive the digital economy are supported by investors, particularly venture capital who provide risk money for entrepreneurs. They are more than just the funders. They are a crucial player in the digital economy, I think. Are those investors as influential in China? And what impact do they have on the growth and innovation in the digital economy in China? It's my first question. And the second one is that the development of talent is a kind of time-consuming process, while the digital economy moves rapidly and dramatically. What are the main challenges in China faces in this area, and how the government and private sector addressing them? It's my second question I want to ask. So it's all from myself, and I'm eager to hear your valuable opinions, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to engage in such a meaningful dialogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Interesting questions to ponder, and we'll get back to them after the Q&A. We will now open the floor for Q&A for additional questions. Any takers? Yes, go ahead. Use this one.
My name is Anshari. Thank you very much, Dr. Sharif, for interesting sharing this afternoon. So you touch a bit about data and big data. As we know that big data is play a very important role in the digital economy. My question here, sometimes in policy recommendations, many face about the trade-off between data privacy versus digital innovations or open data governance. So how Chinese governance experience manage data ownership, especially about big data? Thank you.
Yes, would you like to respond first, or should we go?
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, let me try to address these three questions. First is about venture capital, the importance of venture capital. Thank you very much, Kentaro-san, for the question. To me, I think in Chinese context, maybe venture capital was not as critical, not as crucial as some other in some other cases. What is the most sort of valuable component here is a space. Is a space, a healthy space that allow entrepreneurship to thrive and to take initiative to do things. So, in fact, yes, there were roles played by venture capital. If you look at the big leading big tech platforms, they all had big investors behind them. But I don't think they were the they were the most important forces. What was the most critical was the space allowed, the room that they could take initiative, they could try, they could allow these things to happen. You must imagine the fight or the struggle when there's a new technology, especially in terms of, for example, financial service, digital financial service or fintech, when it came to being, the pressure they received from the traditional financial institutions was huge. They even brought a bill to the parliament or the equivalent, yeah. So there could be a crackdown, could be considered as illegal, could be considered as all sorts of bad things. But eventually, they were allowed. They were considered as an innovation. They were allowed the space to experiment, to thrive, to develop, and that becomes what we see today. So I think venture capital was important, but not as important as the space that digital economy was allowed to thrive or to try and to develop. And the second question about talent, yes, there's always a talent shortage, but I would think China, to some extent, had a very good mass education base. So, for example, we produce, from memory, around 6 million college graduates every year. So lots of them will be able to contribute to the talent pool that support or add impetus into the development of digital economy. So I think but there's something maybe you can also call this as a precondition. In order to have innovation, you need to have the education level, literacy level up to a certain level. Yeah, so I think that's also an important part. And then provided with the right market incentive and relatively relaxed policy environment, then things will happen. And the second, in the third question about data privacy, we haven't solved it. Yeah, the government has established not so long time ago, data Bureau of Data Management. I don't know the official translation, but basically just to deal with the data privacy issue, and not just the privacy, but also all the sort of what you mentioned about ownership and who has the right to own it, to make profit or to share, how do you transfer, but essentially we are facing a question as to thinking data as a new form of a productive factor. It is it's like a gold mine, but who has the right to profit from it, to capitalize it, and how do you balance data privacy to protect individual information and not to fall as a prey for people who have ill intention, and to try to make the most productive effect out of data. So this balancing issue is very challenging. It's a thorny issue, and also legal practice, lawmaking, as well as implementation of these laws are still very much ongoing. And we have these issues and debates as to how much Chinese people care about their data privacy. Some will claim, people don't care. They somehow think, there's nothing to hide, so we're all transparent anyway. The big data know much better about ourselves than us. Yeah. So it is an issue, and I think it's an ongoing struggle, and many of the problems are still unfolding. So we are all on this path to find ways to deal with these problems. So there's a lot to share and to communicate in order to find better ways. But having said that, I think there is a difference between different countries or different society as to how strong the society feels about this and how much we need to be aware of, how much we should educate our people about data privacy and how to provide the necessary protection. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more questions?
Sherry, thank you for joining us online. It's really beautiful here in Krabi, much more beautiful in the real life rather than in the picture. So you must be jealous of us.
I need so much.
You should be joining us offline next time. One question, like Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, decided to invest Apple in China, not because of cost of labor in China, but because of pool of talent that China has. So I would appreciate very much if you could provide a box specifically on how China developed talent in digital, in developing its digital sector. And you can put like many sources. It's either like in appendix or like for ASEANs to learn what are specifics government, society, universities do in developing its talent and attract talents back to China. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will definitely include that in our next version.
Okay. Dr. Armstrong. Yeah.
Hi, Sherry. It's great to see you, even if it's only virtually. I've got two quick questions. I think maybe one or both are probably a bit unfair, but I'm just curious as to your thoughts. Talked about how rapid the growth has been in the digital economy and how it's a driver for GDP growth, and some of the numbers were quite startling. This is notoriously a difficult area to measure. There must be a lot of innovation, a lot of work going on in China in measuring this productivity and the contribution to GDP, and just curious as to if you can speak to any of that. Second question is about, there's a crackdown on big tech in China over the last few years for, I think, fairly similar reasons to what a lot of other countries are dealing with big tech. But that seems to have reversed. Is that right, from what we're reading in the press? Thanks.
Thank you. They are very unfair, having friends like this. Anyway, okay, the first question, I totally agree with you, measurement issue. So that's why I wanted to start with the definition. When you measure digital economy, what do you actually mean? Yeah, if people actually mean different things, then we can start talking about origin apples and then end up with very different conclusions. And then we can't do cross-country comparison. Yeah, so applying digital technology in your production and in your service provision, would that count, and to what extent? To me, I think on the one hand, yeah, I do have some degree of ambiguity about this idea. I'm a little bit ambivalent, but I know the Bureau of Statistics has outlined a very as clear as possible rules as to what counts in what industry, in what sector, what counts and how they did the statistical calculation. But I think fundamentally it is very hard. I give you an example. I try to get the number of the size of fintech in China, but in the end, I sort of give up because it is very difficult. If you think about the different types of fintech businesses, if you're talking about payment, does every transaction that involves mobile payment, digital payment counts as part of a fintech? And then you have deposit, kind of saving or deposit, kind of cash fund in those digital accounts. But then you also have investment. right? So if my fund is put in an investment account, does that all count as the size of digital payment and then, digital economy and fintech? And then what about the traditional banks? Yeah, if they have made use of online banking, if you have an app on your phone of all these big, we call it biggest bank in the universe, and then does everything involved in this bank is counted as a fintech? Then then we are really talking about very different things. So in the end, I guess the trend matters so long as you keep the measurement constant, clearly laid out. You say this is how we measure it, and look at the trend. And I think that trend is to some extent more valuable than what the absolute value indicates. So that's my take, and I'm sure the things will need to be harmonized in order to have a more meaningful kind of cross-country comparison. Or maybe if you look at the specific areas of a digital economy, and instead of taking the whole thing as a whole, what does it mean anyway? And the second part about crackdown of big tech, I'm not entirely sure what you have in mind when you say there's a reverse, or whether it's just slowing down of cracking down, because after all this cracking down, you can only crack down as much, right? So in the end, you have to slow down, or you allow the space for them to grow. But I think it is a struggle to understand to come to terms with it, because they have become so big. On one app, we call them like a big tech platform. On one app, if you have Alipay, you can do everything, and it's linked with all the services you can imagine, plus the ones that you probably will never use. Just the other day, I checked my entry-exit record out of the country, coming back into the country on this app. So it can link with so many things. You can pay your bill, you can do all the things you thought are directly related to fintech, but also so many other things that are linked with government public policy, public service provision. So it is very big. It becomes the essential thing, and then it becomes sort of untouchable, right? It is scary at so many levels. But then when it becomes an issue for the regulators, it is about understanding monopoly and competition. But maybe in terms of this, especially like these fintech sectors, we need to rethink about whether size is the only way to measure monopoly, whether it is a sufficient reason to cut it up, to crack it down, or not crack down, but to cut it up. In terms of P2P platforms, they were cracked down for various reasons. But I think it's a learning process, but it's more about striking a balance. How do you maintain an innovative and sort of relatively liberal market space so innovations can continue to happen, and productive factors can be made use to the best of its capability, and at the same time consumers and are protected in both in terms of their privacy and maybe fund safety. And in the end, we want a technology to achieve social good. And I think that's the ultimate goal, which should be always kept in mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much, Sherry, and we shall now move on to the last session for today. It will be the digital economy in Singapore by Simon Tay Seong Che. I believe he is not present today, and it's his colleague in his place. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Sure. Let me just share my screen. So presenting on behalf of the SWA, we have myself as well as Rohini. We will be taking you through Singapore's digital economy, but more specifically, some of the key challenges that we see for Singapore moving forward. So let me just share my screen. Sorry, having some issues. Give me a moment.
We're not getting anything on the screen.
Yeah, sorry, just give me a second. Sorry, are you able to see the screen now?
Yeah, we can see the PowerPoint.
Great. Okay. So I'll start us off, and then I'll pass the time over to Rohini to elaborate a little bit more about some of the specific areas that we'll be focusing on. So just to give some context for this paper, in this essay we actually discussed the growth prospects for Singapore's digital economy and zoom in on one of the key challenges that the country faces, and that would be balancing the growth of the digital economy with environmental concerns. And I think we decided to focus on this because the digital economy is so broad, and in terms of various aspects of the digital economy in Singapore, we feel like it is more or less, in terms of the foundation, it's more or less developed, and in terms of what Singapore we need to focus on moving forward, sustainability would be a big piece that it needs to figure out to ensure the sustainable growth of the digital economy. So moving on to the overview. Right, so the digital economy in Singapore, just broadly in terms of how much it contributes to Singapore's GDP, it actually accounted for 17.3% of Singapore's GDP in 2022, and this is expected to grow to around $30 billion by 2025. Singapore's digital economy is supported by a strong foundation of digital infrastructure and island-wide connectivity for growth. We have high fixed, median broadband speeds globally. 99% of households have internet access, and we have a mobile penetration rate of 170%, which means that people have more than one mobile phone. This is also supported by high levels of digital education and training amongst most of the citizens in Singapore. Moving on to sustainability for Singapore, we recently raised our national climate target in 2022 to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. We also have raised our midterm target to reduce our 2030 emissions after peaking emissions as well. So this is part of our revised national determined contributions. So part of that whole of government approach or whole of nation approach, we've actually developed the Singapore Green Plan 2030. So this is our approach to achieve sustainable development. It involves multiple ministries looking at specific aspects of sustainable development. And some of the key objectives include an energy reset and growing a green economy. So more broadly, why we wanted to highlight this digital economy as well as the green economy, and more specifically the digital green nexus in Singapore, is we believe that there's an emphasis on incorporating sustainability in the growth of the digital economy moving forward. We see this in the IMDA, so that's the Info Media Development Authority's Digital Connectivity Blueprint, which was just launched this year in 2023. It aims to further strengthen digital infrastructure, but in several of its key pillars, it talks about designing for sustainability and more specifically pathways for the growth of new green data centers as well as the greening of software. This is why we wanted to explore the two key areas which we'll be elaborating on further in the presentation. This would be data centers in Singapore, so digital infrastructure, and that powers Singapore's digital economy, as well as e-commerce and supply chains, which we believe is a rapidly growing sector both in Singapore as well as Southeast Asia. So moving on to data centers specifically, just to give you an overall landscape, I'll paint the landscape of data centers in Singapore. Singapore is currently the top location for data centers in the region. There are a couple of reasons for that, including a strong ecosystem, a good fiber connectivity, growing demand, and cloud services. But because of that, we actually account for 60% of demand in the Asia Pacific. We currently have more than 70 operational data centers, which comprise approximately 7% of total electricity consumption. And it's estimated for, in terms of data center capacity, this will exceed 1 gigawatt in 2024. We currently have around 917 megawatts of capacity right now. In terms of the sustainable growth of data center market, there's some tension between rising data center demand and net zero goals by 2050. The government has acknowledged this and is aware of this. And because of this, they actually imposed a 3-year moratorium on data center construction in 2019 for them to review and revise some of the standards with regards to data center construction. This has resulted in stricter standards for data center providers and for subsequent contracts. Some examples of stricter standards include ensuring that you have a power usage effectiveness of less than 1.3, so that relates to energy efficiency. Certain building certification, so for Singapore's case, it would be the Building Construction Authority and IMDA's Green Mark certification. And lastly, it's the use of innovative technologies as well as renewable energy. This culminated in a pilot exercise in July 2022. So this was actually a data center call for application. So subsequent data center providers were required to put in their requests to operate a data center in Singapore, and they will be evaluated on some of these standards that I mentioned earlier. Where we see the challenge for data centers in Singapore, I think the main one and a very big one would be the limited supply of renewable energy. I think there are two parts to this and aspects in terms of thinking about how to reduce energy consumption of data centers. Just to give you an idea of how much demand we are likely to have, we are likely to exceed 3,000 megawatts by 2030, and currently the government is allocating around 60 megawatts per year. So as you can see, there's quite a discrepancy in terms of demand versus what is currently allocated. So in terms of reducing electricity consumption, I think we can look at it two ways. So first, that's the demand side. So companies are trying to increase their operational and energy efficiencies to make operating data centers more efficient. So this is through the use of innovative technologies like artificial intelligence as well as machine learning to make things more efficient within the data center. The other aspect that you can look at it would be the supply side. So this is related to greening the grid or having access to renewable sources of energy. So basically, if you have access to renewable sources of energy and you're using green sources, what that would mean is that, eventually your data center will also be green because it's running on renewable energy. But Singapore has a couple of issues or problems with regards to that. So first would be resource constraints. I think as everyone knows, we're quite a small country. We don't have a lot of land, and in terms of some of the 4 switches that we've identified in how to proceed with regards to renewable energy moving forward, it has been quite challenging, and I'll elaborate a little bit on that later. The next is trying to transition from our current energy mix to more renewable sources of energy. I've included some of the figures there. We currently use 92% natural gas, and only 2.9% of our total electricity currently is generated from renewable sources. So the government has identified these 4 switches, which include solar, regional power grids, low carbon alternatives, and natural gas as, solutions for our energy moving forward, energy consumption moving forward. And we've also identified a national hydrogen strategy as a potential alternative energy that we can consider. I'll highlight some of the challenges in terms of doing this later, but we have a couple of projects in place, but I would just like to touch on that the main challenge is still trying to access renewable energy in Singapore. The next challenge would be the availability of certified carbon credits. So right now in the interim, we see that most data center providers either purchase international renewable energy certificates, so these are RECs, or carbon credits to offset their emissions. This is in addition to basically trying to increase the energy efficiency by increasing operational efficiencies within data centers. There are a couple of issues with both of them. So for RECs, they actually do not contribute to Singapore's national determined contributions. And for carbon credits, there's a shortage of carbon credits that currently qualify as international traded mitigation options under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. So what that means is that there's a need for regional voluntary carbon markets in ASEAN. Currently for ASEAN countries, most of them actually lack a stated carbon price or tax, and there is potential for ASEAN to be a carbon credit production hub. This is due to the rise of nature-based projects and solutions that we see in the region. And this demand has actually led to the launch of 4 voluntary carbon markets recently. So this is Carbon Impact X in Singapore, Bursa Carbon Exchange in Malaysia, FTX in Thailand, as well as the Indonesia Stock Exchange. So that's the latest one. And in terms of how the government has approached data centers in Singapore, we see that they've adopted a very collaborative approach, and I would say a sort of private-public partnership model. So there's been frequent consultation with industry players as well as technical experts. And this is to ensure the feasibility of new standards and regulation moving forward. They've also capitalized on private sector expertise and resources for new solutions, so coming up with innovative or adopting innovative technologies. This is to ensure an iterative policy-making process where feedback can be incorporated and they will be able to tweak certain policies depending on the feedback given. So for example, the new sustainability standard that Singapore has currently adopted, so this would be related to tropical data centers operating at 26 degrees Celsius and above. There was actually a creation of a working group comprising of both domain and technical experts from both industry and academia. They also conducted a pilot trial with select data center operators and partners to ensure that this sustainability standard was feasible for them and achievable. So I'll now pass on the time to Rohini to talk a little bit more about e-commerce and supply chains.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa. I'm Rohini. I'm Assistant Director Policy Programs at the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. So I'll now touch on the other key component of Singapore's digital economy, which is the e-commerce sector. So in 2021, e-commerce sales soared to US $8 billion, and the gross merchandise volume is projected to escalate to $9.8 billion by 2025. So we think this is a significant sector to look at. And the surge in digital transaction encompassing both retail and food delivery has pushed Singapore's e-commerce landscape into rapid expansion. The pandemic also forced many physical retail stores to join the e-commerce market, and likewise for consumers to purchase their items online. Popular online platforms saw an increase in the number of monthly web visits, with online retailer giant Shopee seeing an increase of nearly 10 million platform visits between 2019 and 2022. Next slide, please.
I will have to ask you to speed this up, though, because you're officially out of time. So please.
Okay, I'll just speed through.
Thank you.
Okay, so the number one challenge we see with an increase in the e-commerce sector is the increase in packaging waste. Because of the ease of checking out items online and doorstep delivery options, it has made it very convenient for consumers to purchase things online, which has led to an overconsumption of goods and consequently more waste being produced through excessive packaging. So the packaging required to deliver products to consumers accounts for 45% of carbon emissions in the e-commerce supply chain and dominates the number of plastic waste generated in Singapore. Next, because of that, the second challenge impacting the pursuit of sustainability is higher carbon emissions due to an increase in the number of deliveries. E-commerce has led to more delivery vehicles being utilized to fulfill last mile deliveries, leading to higher carbon emission. And okay, I'll just skip through next, please. And the third challenge we've identified is supply chain sustainability. 75% of companies' greenhouse gases are Scope 3 emissions, but there's a lack of visibility in terms of measurement and supply chain visibility. Traditional supply chain are also reliant on physical paperwork, and it creates operational efficiencies. Next, please. So the current measures taken by the government, I'll just outline here quickly. The National Environment Agency has introduced a zero waste master plan, which maps out Singapore's key strategies, requiring suppliers to submit packaging data, and it focuses on reduce, reuse, and recycling plans. So these reports include the type of packaging material used and their corresponding weight. The National Environment Agency is also rolling out an e-waste management system to regulate and reduce e-waste. In terms of improving supply chain efficiency, the Singapore government is offering several grants that allow firms to digitalize their supply chain such that it reduces the need for physical paperwork and increases the agility of operations. Next, please. And the private sector has also released some of their own measures to reduce waste and limit carbon footprint. So we can see that Grab has announced efforts for a full fleet of their vehicles to run on cleaner energy by 2030. Zalora, which is an e-commerce platform, has also sustainability targets by 2030. They've announced that their packaging will be made with at least 80% recycled material. And now I'll quickly outline the policy suggestions that we have put in our paper. We have 4 main suggestions, and I'll go through them in detail. Next, please. Firstly, it would be upgrading grid infrastructure and capacity. So earlier, Janessa talked about the need for renewable energy to support data centers. So firstly, it would be increasing investment in smart grid, which would be, and then secondly, it would be facilitating cross-border energy trade. And lastly, it would be exploring low-carbon alternatives. Next, please. Our second recommendation is investing in technology to reduce carbon footprint. So this would include increase in investments in green coding, tracking and tracing Scope 3 emissions, and digitalizing supply chains. Next will be waste management. There is a need to further develop waste management infrastructure in Singapore and facilitate a mindset shift such that less waste can be generated. So this could include efforts to collaborate with tech giants to develop waste management infrastructure. And secondly, it would be mindset shifts on managing waste. And our last recommendation would be prioritizing green and digital skills infrastructure. We recommend a long-term approach of upgrading tertiary curriculum and corporate sector training to prioritize teaching green digital skills. The government has already implemented some efforts to develop digital skills, and we believe to complement these programs, further emphasis should be placed on the intersection between digital skills and sustainability. And lastly, I'll just conclude that the digital economy must proceed in tandem with sustainability. And Singapore is well poised to capture some of these opportunities due to decades of development and investment in infrastructure and skills and training. The main challenge that we outline in this paper is in terms of environment and climate. And so there is a need to, as Singapore develops the next stage of its digital economy, it's important for the government to look at both digital and sustainability in tandem. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Very interesting. So now we will move over to the discussant, Dr. Mohammed Anshari.
Hello. Thank you, Ms. Janessa and Ms. Rohini, for sharing important and interesting policy paper, because the paper focuses on how best to balance the growth of the digital economy with environmental concerns. I think my slide, my discussion could be on. Yes, thank you. So 2 key areas are discussed in these policy papers. So the first is the sustainable physical digital infrastructure of data centers, which drives Singapore's digital economy. And the second is the growth of e-commerce sector and its connections to supply chain. So I'm going to give a comment or question for both sectors, both topics discussed today. So for the first, challenges in the pursuit of sustainable data center, my first comment, probably my first question here, you may respond or may improve in your policy paper later on. So data centers are a critical component of digital infrastructure and cloud computing industry, yes. It involves many stakeholders and actors in data centers providers ecosystem. So therefore, it is necessary to create, develop, suggest more robust policy formulation that covers all stakeholders in the DC ecosystem, digital center ecosystem. What I mean by digital center ecosystem here is could be from the DC operator, equipment manufacturer, software provider, facility management and maintenance, network providers, power suppliers, environmental experts, security compliant, and DC users. So from the stakeholder analysis, the policy recommendation will be more solid and more robust. So that's my first comment for the policy, for the first topic. And for the second one, how can data center operators effectively measure and manage the environmental impacts beyond carbon emission? In the policy papers, talks lots about carbon emissions. However, when it talks about DC center, it's not only about the challenge, not only about the carbon emission, considering aspect about water usage, e-waste management, and resource efficiency. So perhaps one policy recommendation approach to address these challenges is to promote circular economy practice and policy in your paper for the sustainable DC, for sustainable data center. This includes encouraging the reuse, recycle electronic equipment and creating program to extend the life of electronic devices while reducing electric waste. So that's for the first topic discussed in these policy papers. And the second one, challenges in the pursuit of sustainability in e-commerce. I have two questions here. Yes, undoubtedly, no doubt Singapore is global leader in digital economy. So I think authors have explained challenges in the pursuit of sustainability e-commerce very well. One of the impact of, discussed earlier in this presentation, one of the impact is increased packaging waste due to the e-commerce. So perhaps it will be good lesson learned if the policy papers adds the policy recommendations about the role of R&D, just like I mentioned many presentations earlier, the role of R&D either from universities or research institutions for this issue. I think how could R&D, research and development, tackle the potential challenges, barriers associated with the transitions to circular economy practice to overcome these challenges in the waste management. So my last comments are probably my questions in this policy recommendation. And you get to the sustainable supply chains in your last point, with the rapid developments of AI, what our policy recommendation can be proposed, with many jobs in the e-commerce supply chains are replaced by the machine or automation. So meaning here what we probably wants to learn more from Singapore development of e-commerce in this context of sustainable supply chain, how to balance between human need versus machine need in terms of supply chain, sustainable supply chains. Thank you. Back to the moderator.
Thank you very much. So do we have any additional questions from the floor? Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the very advanced presentation, I think. But I think seeing this last presentation and joining this from since the morning, we can really see how the digital divide in ASEAN, like all the topics. I mean, like we're talking about from the digital literacy to the green digital green ASEAN presented by the Singapore. Only by attending today's presentation, we can see the digital divide. So I mean, like, is it an issue that always only raised by the developing and least developed countries, or does Singapore also have any issues on concerns on this? And I mean, like, how Singapore perceive the digital divide within the ASEAN, and what is do you touch upon that digital divide in your paper? And because we know that Singapore cannot stand alone, and within the ASEAN, how to envision the digital transformation within the ASEAN? That's actually my question. Thank you.
Shall we respond? We have one other question here. Shall we ask? I'll let you respond first. Yes, go ahead. Please respond.
Yep. Okay. I think you can try and take a stab at addressing that question. So I think if I were to break down there were two questions. It's, does Singapore have a digital divide? And I guess to a certain extent what the government is doing to address that within Singapore. And the next is, how do we perceive the digital divide in ASEAN, and whether we consider that in some of our policy recommendations with regards to thinking about ASEAN Digital Community 2045. So I think let's touch on the first one. Does Singapore have a digital divide? I would say yes, but not in terms of digital infrastructure. I would say it's more in terms of trying to ensure that MSMEs are able to participate in the digital economy. And that includes ensuring that they're equipped with the necessary skills and tools that they need to participate. So in terms of government initiatives, Enterprise Singapore, alongside EDB, they're very active in trying to upskill MSMEs. So this includes having something called, like, they call it CTO as a service, so Chief Technological Officer as a service. So this is in collaboration with IMDA to basically identify, they basically engage with consultants like Accenture to provide MSMEs with a free service which basically assesses their readiness to adopt certain digital tools and helps them onboard some of their current work streams online. And basically, it could be something as simple as putting it on Microsoft Excel. I think that's something that the Singapore government is actively trying to help MSMEs upskill and upgrade some of their operations in this regard. So another aspect I would say is payments as well. So I think over the course of COVID-19, the government has realized that, so Singapore has a lot of hawker centers and coffee shops, and a lot of times use cash payments to make purchases in these areas. So I think a big push was actually to get some of these vendors to adopt QR code payments. This is through PayNow, which is the equivalent of, for example, PromptPay in Thailand, right? So QR code payments was something that the government was helping basically those that were not as digitally literate, particularly the older generation, and help them kind of adopt digital tools and grow in the digital economy as well. So I think that is how inclusivity is perceived from Singapore's standpoint within Singapore. The next question on how do we perceive the digital divide in ASEAN? I think, as you mentioned, Singapore is very concerned with ASEAN's overall digital growth, and inclusivity is a big aspect of, I would say, our work, as well as what Singapore hopes to do. I think in a lot of the MOUs that we have, or trade agreements with regards to the digital economy, a lot of them consist of skills training and exchange of knowledge, also knowledge transfers. This is in the form of partnerships between research institutions like our universities and the other countries' universities, or in the areas of innovation and research and development between different institutions as well. So I think this is something that we do see as a key issue for ASEAN, and we acknowledge that, and this is some of the, I would say, some of the initiatives and ways that we're trying to address it.
Okay, thank you. And Francis, I believe you had a question.
Yeah, building on the previous question, Singapore is in the frontier of the digital economy, and the paper perhaps inadvertently presents that once we are at the frontier, we can begin thinking about the sustainability of the digital economy or the digital economy ecosystem. But should this be the case? I mean, should this be the norm? For the developing countries in ASEAN, should we all first push to reach the frontier and then start incorporating the sustainability aspect, or should it be already folded in as we pursue a digital economy? I think that's an issue that the paper, whether intentionally or not, presents a good question to all the ASEAN countries. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. I think for this paper, we focused a lot on Singapore, but I think what we broadly recommend is for ASEAN countries to look at both digital and sustainability in tandem. And in fact, if it's looked at from the very beginning, it will make things easier in the long run, especially as ASEAN countries have long-term climate commitments and net zero targets. So if, for example, if they're building a new data center, if they're already looking at sustainability from the start, it would really help things in getting the necessary infrastructure of the data center that's more sustainable. And I think it would be more helpful for ASEAN countries to look at it from that perspective instead of achieving digital growth and then looking at sustainability. Yeah. Janessa, you want to add on?
Yeah, if I could chime in as well. I think, so we elaborate a bit more in our special report, Building a Digital Green ASEAN, because we also acknowledge that different ASEAN member states are at different processes and different levels of digital economy development. And I think in terms of pushing solely the needle on sustainability, it's not what we hope to convey and not what we intend to push for as well. So I think in terms of having a foundation for the digital economy, we believe that that's very important. So we term these as building blocks for the digital economy. So that will include things like digital infrastructure, digital utilities, digital payments, and digital trade. So we do think that it is important to build some of these things up. We just think that in the process of thinking about the digital economy, and achieving some of these goals, part of the consideration set could be considering sustainability and how that might actually help with the growth of the digital economy and vice versa, because you can leverage certain digital technologies to help achieve your sustainability goals as well.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh. Try.
Is it working?
Yeah. Yeah.
Question. I think sustainability.
Sorry, got some microphone issues here.
Yeah, just following up from the previous questions. I think sustainability. Hello. Yeah, sustainability issues is also a problem for a country like Indonesia. I think what is not mentioned in the presentation is that the new data centers in Singapore after the moratorium is done mostly in collaboration with Indonesia, actually in the island of Batam, right? And in the cooperation, both countries strive to use more renewable energy, sustainable energy for supporting the data center. But sooner or later, the need or the demand for data center in Indonesia will also be growing. Especially Indonesia has data localization regulation in the financial sector, and with the yeah, okay. We can expect that the demand for data center in Indonesia will also be growing, and this could maybe create like some kind of like contention, right, between countries like Singapore and Indonesia. But I do think that sustainability issue needs to be accounted, you know, when we think about digital economy in ASEAN, because yes, digital economy is very energy intensive, and it could be in contradiction, in conflict with the ASEAN countries' goal of net zero emission. So that's one. And secondly, I wonder if your team has any data on talent flows, digital talent flows into Singapore, right? I mean, there must be some outflows as well, but I wonder if your team has data that could highlight like how much Singapore has attracted digital talents from ASEAN, other ASEAN countries, but also from other global countries. And then the third, you know, since we talk about ASEAN digital community, right, beyond economics, I wonder if you could also highlight, you know, what maybe general citizens think about how Singapore manage this information and the agency to control for or to address fake news, right? I think Singapore is walking or trying to strike a delicate balance between allowing freedom of expression or freedom of speech, and also managing disinformation in terms of, you know, content moderations and taking down like what is considered as fake news. I think most of it is under the agency POHMA, right? So we'll appreciate your views on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question and comments. So I think if I could summarize it, would basically be new data center development in terms of collaboration with Indonesia and Batam Digital Park and the growth of the data center market in Indonesia. I think that is something that we have considered, and I think, like you mentioned, is something that's already happening. I don't think that there's possible competition or contention. I think, as you mentioned, Singapore is currently at capacity in terms of our ability to host more data centers and also achieve our net zero goals. So I think some of this collaboration, I think Batam is one of them. If I'm not wrong, Johor is another that we are looking at as well, would be important and imperative to our net zero goals moving forward. The next one is on data on digital talent flows into Singapore. I think that's something that the team and I would need to have a check on to see whether we have any quantitative data on that. But that's a good point and potentially would be good to include if we have some data on that. The last one would be on general citizen perception on issues like freedom of speech and the delicate balance that the government is trying to draw between allowing for freedom of speech but also content regulation. I think in terms of general citizen perception, we will need to check whether we do have some of the data on that. But I think over here, with regards to the digital economy, I think the paper itself we've scoped it in terms of sustainability. So this aspect, I think, while interesting, and we will probably do some more research for our own knowledge as well, might not be particularly relevant to the paper. I can share that in terms of looking at POFMA and it's, I would say, separate from cybersecurity and how we envision it. So it sits under separate authorities as well. So Ministry of Home Affairs versus the Cybersecurity Agency. So in this regard, we can see that this specific aspect is related to, I would say, our concerns with regards to our national interests. So I think that is what I can contribute for all three of those points. Rohini, if you have anything else to add, please feel free.
Yeah, I think I just want to add with the moratorium, many of our data center operators that we have spoken to have highlighted plans of looking at other countries in the region to further expand, and Indonesia comes up quite a bit. And so I think there's opportunities for, Singapore companies that are looking to move abroad because of our limited land space. So we don't really see it as a point of contention, but areas where Singapore and Indonesia can collaborate further. And in similar sense, Singapore and Malaysia as well, with the talks about a special economic zone in Johor. I think the other 2 points, it's interesting, but because of the limited scope of this paper, we really focused on sustainability. But I think it would be areas for future research for the SIIA. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final questions? No. Okay, well, thank you very much. Very insightful. That actually brings us to a close. The last session has been cancelled, so this was the last session for today. And we shall now look forward to a team dinner. But before that, I think we have a few words from our organizers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Larson.
Thank you very much.
That is a wrap for day one of the Policy Dialogue on ASEAN Digital Community 2045. Thank you all for your participation for today, and we will see you at the team dinner will be at the Swan Bois restaurant. Please be sure to be there by 6 p.m. Thank you and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
For tomorrow, it will start, the dialogue will start at 9:30 a.m. sharp. Thank you.
So that's 9:30 a.m. tomorrow we start the dialogue. Yes, 9:30. Okay, thank you.
Record